Hi, this is Gayle from BERNINA of Naperville, and finally the hoops have started to ship. So we got our preliminary shipment of the magnet hoops, the medium border clamp hoop, and the sock hoops, plus the big book of fashion. So those are going to be trickling out to you as soon as we can. We are waiting for one more shipment of the medium magnetic hoops, but we do have stock of some of the other things, so make sure that you hop on over to BERNINAofNaperville.com and check that out, and don't miss out on the opportunity to get one of these really cool attachments, because this is really exciting that we have so many things to choose from. Normally, it's like one hoop a year, so this is good, right? All right, so I'm going to just take you through some of the best practices, some of the benefits of the magnet hoop, and even some of the disadvantages. So stick around and let's get over to the design table and talk about it.
Well, here are the three magnet hoops. So this is really exciting because there's a lot of benefits of the magnet hoops. And let's just talk a little bit about what you can expect with the Bernina magnet hoop. So let's take the medium one, for instance. These come packed exactly as you see here, but they come in a much larger box. And I'm gonna take this off here to kind of show you that you have this little recess in the corners like this, and that's so that you can stick your finger in here to remove the magnet, because these have quite a firm grip on them and you don't want to pinch. Now, speaking of pinching, another thing that you want to be careful of is when you store your hoops, you do not want to put this directly on top of the hoop because you honestly can get a blood blister. So that is something to be mindful of. So let's talk about these special Bernina hoops, because these are not the same as some of the other more generic hoops that have been produced. First of all, we've got that super strong, last forever Bernina plastic on here. And if you don't know, Bernina recognizes the hoops based on the little humps here on the side of the hoops. For instance, going way back to our large hoop here, our large oval, we have the little bumps on the side to read. So that's how the machine knows basically what hoop it's got on. So if you look over where your hoop attaches, you'll see that there's like this little thing that either slides back and forth, like on the 5 series, to read your hoops, or it's hidden in the little keys, like on your 7 series and 9 series modules. Another thing about the Bernina hoops, you can always count on your little squeeze and lift and squeeze and put down piece that you see here. And a very special thing that I like about these is we've got anti-slip pieces here on the back. That's what that green tape is. So your hoop doesn't slide around on your table. Now, you caught me here. I want to show you something that I do. And that's on my little spacer that you always want to put between your hoop top and your hoop bottom. I tape my template. Now, I do want to warn you, I don't use the template very often for this. I use a lot of my pinpoint placement and the scanner on my 990 and, things like that. But I don't want to lose this. So I'm taping it to the backside of this template so I always know where I have my stuff. Okay, let's get down to the nitty gritty here and let's talk about some other advantages of these hoops. I'm using the medium hoop here. This is the one that's going to fit all the Bernina embroidery machines. So even your 5 series machines, like your 590, your 570 Quilters Edition Next Generation, your 535, those goodies, right? And don't forget that with the new firmware updates, your original 770 Quilters Edition or your 770 Quilters Edition Plus 735s can also get the firmware to be able to use the new magnetic hoops. But we're focusing on this one because this is the one that's going to work on all the Berninas. But the large and the medium hoop magnetic hoop is is wonderful. Okay. So here I have kind of a very basic thing that I like to do edge to edge quilting on or quilting in the hoop or whatever. And that is like a layer of linen, soft and stable, and then another layer of my quilting cotton or my linen. And I think anybody who's ever done like by Annie's pattern where you have to pre-quilt your items will appreciate the beauty of using a magnet hoop for this. Now, that leads me to a topic. The Bernina hoop magnetization is very strong. And why this is very nice because this is very strong is I don't have to figure out a way to muscle this foam into my clamp hoop, which I love my clamp hoop. I love these so much for Kimberbell projects and projects where I'm floating a design. So please don't get me wrong there. But if I try to, clamp this in, sometimes it gets a little tight as I go all the way around here, and my little pieces might pop out or whatever the case is, right? It also hurts my hands just a little bit. So that's one thing. Now, some of the other more generic hoops that you might see do not have as many magnets going around the hoop, so that can be potentially problematic. Another thing is if I place my work in the hoop and I don't get it exactly how I like it, I don't have to keep popping it out of the hoop, popping it back in. I can literally just kind of shimmy things around here to get it into position. And of course, we have our template that I can place in to make sure that everything's going to fit in the hoop for me. And so I actually shimmied when I wouldn't have needed to shimmy. That's the story of my life, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Okay, that's perfect. So that was a lot easier than trying to precisely hoop in some of my two-part hoops where I have to do the little ratchet and everything. So that's another benefit. Now, I already mentioned the benefit of the little grippies under the hoop, that green little extra grip. That also is a time saver for sure. So let's talk about some other things. I'm working with my soft and stable here, and I've got like black fabric. And if you look at our magnet hoops, regardless if it's the medium one, the medium border magnetic, or the large magnetic, you'll see that they are all rectangular. Now, way back when remember when we had those 180 Artista machines and we had that 6-inch by 8-inch rectangular hoop? Do you remember getting the hoop burn? Well, that is why Bernina adopted this oval shape hoop. And that's because with an oval shape and round shapes, like you'll see on some of the industrial machines, it prevents hoop burn. However, it doesn't prevent hoop burn on everything. We still have velvet, piled fabric, sometimes polar fleece, sometimes knits, and what have you, might also get hoop burn. So now we can have the best of both worlds because we have a two-piece hoop that doesn't have any lip or anything on it. It's just like a little flat piece clamping down on your fabric, and now you don't get the hoop burn. You don't get the pain in your hands trying to hoop, and you have that full rectangular field. And another thing, if you have a generic hoop that isn't made by Bernina, you're not getting that full rectangular field, are you? If you've ever used the generic hoops, you're getting only whatever is the largest shape. So in this case, this would be the midi. So right now on our Bernina 5 series, the midi is pretty much the largest hoop if you take into consideration the width of the hoop. But now we have not only that width, but now we can go up to the corners here and we don't get the little corners chopped off. So I can do a square or rectangle shape without worrying about those corners protruding into the curve of that template. This is also the case with the maxi hoop. So the maxi hoop is just about lengthwise the same size as the large magnetic hoop. However, just like this, it doesn't cut the corners off. All right, cool, right? Okay. So another thing that has been a question is how well does the magnet work with the stable, soft and stable, right? I am literally holding this by the soft and stable, and this magnetic hoop is not moving a magnet muscle, a grippy grip, whatever you want to say. So that is pretty exciting. So now I'm ready to take this over to the machine and do my quilting right inside this shape here, because this shape is the just about a quarter of an inch shy from the maximum hoop field that you have with the medium magnetic hoop. Speaking of sending it to the machine, there are new firmware updates so that you can read these new hoops. And I want to mention to you that you can go straight to Bernina.com to retrieve those. You will have to go to the support page for the machine that you have, and you'll have to make sure that you read the release notes and you follow the directions for downloading the design, extracting the design, and transferring the design to your USB stick. Now, some of you, you're a little daunted by this task. I know. So all you have to do is go to BERNINAofNaperville.com and order our Bernina of Naperville USB stick, and just write there in the notes at checkout which machine you have, and we are happy to load that USB stick with the new firmware update. So that will be really easy for you. In fact, if you have not yet ordered your new hoops, and this is any of the hoops, the sock hoop, insert, or the medium border clamp hoop, in addition to the magnetic hoops, you can certainly go ahead and do that. And then if you order that at the same time as your hoops, then you're all set to go when your hoops arrive. Furthermore, there are some new things that you're going to get with the update. And one of them is a little Easter egg in there. No, not an actual Easter egg, but an actual little teaser of something that is coming out. It's going to be introduced this fall from Bernina International, and it's going to be ready for us here in the States, probably Q1 of next year. So I'm just going to make sure that you truly peruse your machine after this update to see if you can find that Easter egg. Because how fair would it be if I just told you what it is? If you discover what it is, I'd love to see it in the comments of this video. All right. Well, my firmware has been completed, it's been uploaded, and it's on my machine. So now let's go ahead and stitch something pretty on our little sample.
Okay, so I have a design that's chosen to fit perfectly in my hoop. I have the MAG-M, that's the medium magnet hoop, and I'm ready to stitch it out. So I'm going to go to Stitch Out, and on my Stitch Out summary, if this is a quilting design and you don't want to do your little cuttings and things, you can go ahead and say on. I'm going to do that. I think I'd like to do basting around the hoop this time, just for fun. Now, of course, when we pick quilt settings, it turns off the thread away and the thread cutting, and that's fine. I want to change this to single color. I've got my number 26 presser foot on. It's going to detect a hoop. Fabric thickness is fine, and now I'm going to say OK. Now it wants me to move my hoop around so it can like wiggle into place. And of course, the arm of the hoop is moving. Now it wants me to attach a hoop, which of course I'm going to do by squeezing and placing this onto the place where I attach the hoop. And now my machine is asking me which hoop. Now this is important because, ladies and gentlemen, we're a little spoiled sometimes, right? Because if we put the giant hoop on there, it detects a giant hoop and we need to take no further action. If we use our medium square clamp hoop, it knows we don't have any further action. So we're working on the honor system here. We know that it is a huge no-no. If we're using the magnet medium, we do not choose the magnet large, right? Because we will have a little disaster. So I'm using the magnet medium, which means I'm going to touch this one, which is blue, and say, okay. Now we're going to wiggle it around again. And now we're ready to stitch. Let's turn on our laser for fun. Okay, so we're going to baste. So I'm going to do a thread up command where I press my needle up down button here externally on my machine. And now I'm going to pull that thread. Sometimes I need tweezers to help me out here. There we go. And now we're going to stitch. I'm going to go slowly. And now let's address this situation. If we look at this, it's a little bit offset. And this could be me, or this could be that we have a need, oopsie daisies, a need to calibrate our hoop, because see how close that got there? So when you get a hoop, there's only the need to calibrate it once. So I've got my template in here, and I want to make sure that I calibrate it so that my needle is going right to that piece there. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to my little hamburger there, and I'm going to pick settings, and I'm going to go to embroidery, and I'm going to select hoop calibration. And now I've got my magnet medium on there, and I can already see that it needs to be calibrated. You can see the distance there from there to there. All right. So now what I'm going to do is move that dot into the center of that piece. And I'm going to do that with these arrows on the screen. So I'm going to move my hoop this direction until my laser is going right in that hole. I also need to move the hoop this way. Now it's seated over it properly. Just there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to go back to my embroidery side. And now this is familiar, right? Let's make sure that our needle is in the middle of the hoop, and it is. Now we're going to do that basting again. So let's go to stitch this out. And now I want my quilt settings on. I want to go around the hoop. Everything is happy. And let's rebaste this. Now I'm going to take the template out. And you're going to be able to see right there that this is quite different from my original basting line. You can see it's up about 1 millimeter and over about 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and start again. And now we can really see the difference there. So now another thing that I didn't do when I placed this is I didn't use any pinpoint placement. I didn't use any morphing or anything like that. I was kind of going along old school, using my template and just trying to center this rectangle in here, right? So if you wanted to do the pinpoint placement with this, I mean, it's really the same as we've always done that. But if you need a little review, let's go back and go back to edit. And now this time we're going to go to our pinpoint placement icon, which lives down here under position. And I am going to use my 4-point, and I want a little bit of a margin. And this would be about 1/8 of an inch. 6 millimeters would be 1/4. And I think that's good for me. So I'm going to touch the corner here. And now I'm going to use my laser and my multifunction knobs. Let's see if I can just zoom out so you can see everything that's happening here. So down here, I'm going to turn this knob and get it right in that corner. And then I'm doing the same thing over here. You can see, perfect. Let's go down here. Perfect. And now over here. Okay. I'm happy with that. And now let's go ahead and stitch it out again. Okay. First, I want to cut my thread just so I don't have a lot of string under there. And now I'll do a thread up command again. Okay. And now let's get started. And this time I can go ahead and put my speed up all the way. Now, of course, I did a lot of back and forth on this one, and it was only to show you, number one, that I didn't calibrate the hoop, and I should have, right? Number two, it was to just show you the difference between having the perimeter of the hoop stitched with and without hoop calibration, which was kind of scary. And now I'm doing it the way that I would. I always like to make sure that I take my time to place my items properly, because you spend a lot of time piecing your quilts and you don't want to bung something up with poorly placed quilting. Okay, so we're done. I can cut and remove my hoop. So now here's our work. I can go ahead and trim my threads. Peel the top part of the hoop off. Remember, we're going to store it with our little piece in between. But I can lose templates faster than you can say template. So let's put this back, put this on here, and put the top back on. Now, for whatever reason, if you get confused and you're like, which size is this? You can always just do a little medium on here, an MB on the medium border magnetic hoop, and maybe an L for the large magnetic hoop. Okay, so look at this cool thing here. So there's the top after I've taken all the basting stitches out, and there's the back. And this gives us a nice reference to show us what the actual embroidery field is for our medium magnetic hoop. All right, so we've talked about all of the great things and how easy they are to work, and now you're going to be a master at using these, right? So let's talk about some of the things that you need to watch out for. First of all, I have to say that the magnet hoops are not going to replace everything. So there are going to be some applications. For instance, I did the sample with the soft and stable, but what if you want to do a big king size quilt and you've got some heavy batting and you don't have like a proper mechanism to kind of hold it up for you or whatever, right? Or you don't have a big table like I do where you can push the quilting machine, your 990 or your 770 or whatever it happens to be, and you just don't have that support. Well, the force of a big quilt moving around in your hoop could slide that magnet hoop off. So in that case, that's where I would recommend that medium border clamp hoop. That's the largest of the clamp hoop series, and it works so well, and it does have 12 clamps, but sometimes in some situations you might not be able to squeeze all 12 of them on there. Well, get as many of those clamps on there as possible. Or you could float your quilt onto some water-soluble stabilizer. But we're going to talk about that hoop in a separate video. Another thing, you have to keep these magnet hoops clean. So, fabric has sizing in it. You may use lots of 505 spray. There could be just so many different things that can get on the hoop. So you want to make sure that you clean them, and you want to kind of make sure that you keep that little protector in there, because there have been reports of, not necessarily the Bernina ones because they're new, right? But some other brands losing their magnetization year, after years. So please, just be mindful of that. Another thing is, we talked about this already, but they can pinch your fingers, when they just put that super grip on there. So just be careful. We don't want any injuries or anything like that. And also, we did have some comments in our YouTube comments when we introduced these hoops. What about a pacemaker or a medical device that's implanted inside of you? Well, I'm not a doctor, but there is a warning in the material for these hoops that state that this can affect your pacemaker device. So always consult your physician, consult your pacemaker manufacturer, but be very aware that if you do have a pacemaker, you might want to stick to the clamp hoops rather than the magnetic hoops. Now, some other things that you want to be mindful of: the magnetic hoops are made of plastic, and they're very rugged plastic. However, if you are somebody like me that has like a big window in their sewing room and you get a lot of sun or a lot of heat, if these are not stored kind of hanging up or completely flat on a surface, you know how it is. You go into the sewing room and then the magnet hoop is on top of the fabric. Then there's something else on top of the magnet hoop and then more fabric on top of that and whatever. Yeah, you know what happens? As the heat heats everything up, all of a sudden your magnet hoop might not be completely flat. It could be warped, so we want to avoid that. So I would recommend hanging them up on pegboard if you can, or storing them vertically in some way, or store them flat without anything on them. So if you have like a little skinny shelf, you could have a little slot dedicated to each size of your magnet hoops. I mentioned cleaning. I would use a little bit of soap and water to clean them. Don't submerge them in water. No dishwashers, please, right? Or you can use some denatured alcohol. There is a product that is made at OESD that you can find called DK5, and that will clean the sticky 505 spray off of the hoop. Well, I hope that this information was valuable for you, and you certainly give one of the magnet hoops a try. I have to have all of the hoops because that's just how I am. But there might just be one perfect size out there for you. So let's recap the different sizes of magnet hoops and how they compare to their counterparts of hoops that we already have out there.
So the magnet hoops, here's our large magnetic hoop, and you can see that it's 8 1/4 by 15 3/4 in size. Now, let's talk about the maxi versus the large magnetic hoop. So on the Bernina 7 series and 8 series and 9 series, you can use a maxi hoop. You can see it here to the right, and you can see that I've superimposed it on top of the large magnetic hoop. Now, essentially, these are about the same size. The maxi hoop is a little bit wider, but just a smidge shorter, whereas the large magnetic hoop is a little bit narrower, but just a scotch longer. Now, there's a slight difference, which really doesn't matter to me, but look what you get if you get the large magnet hoop. You get these little corners, which is essential if you're trying to do something rectangular, because on our maxi hoop, look here, it really shrinks the area if you want to do something rectangular. So this is a crucial tool that you need in your embroidery coffers if you have a 7, 8, or a 9 series machine. Let's talk about the Bernina medium border magnetic hoop. And this one is 6.5 by 15 3/4. And this one currently works on the Bernina 7, 8, and 9 series machines, just like the Bernina large magnet hoop. But this one is just a little skinnier, and this is nice to save some fabric if you don't want to cut your batting and your backing so much larger than your quilt. It's a little bit narrower to accommodate borders. Now we have the medium magnetic hoop, and this one is 6.5 by like 10.4 inches. And this one will work on the 5 series, 7 series, 8 series, and 9 series machines. This is the one that we demoed in the video. And the cool thing about this, particularly for those of you that have a 5 series machine, is that if we compare our MIDI hoop to our medium magnet hoop, you will see once again that you're going to get corners with this, because if you look at this MIDI hoop, you can only do almost just a square in this. So if we go to this medium magnet hoop, it gives us far more surface area to do a rectangular design. So yes, there's no difference in size, but you gain more area because you don't have the rounded corners. Hope this helps.
All right, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check out our sock hoop insert video and our medium border clamp hoop video. And you know, we have a lot of other videos out there on our YouTube channel, so why don't you go on over there? It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville, and you can like, comment, subscribe, comment, all of those good things, and I'll catch you later somewhere else on this channel. Thank you so much. See ya.